Yeah, Marlo Mike coming home. It's official. Should see him by 2027. Mike coming.
Yeah, Marlo Mike coming home. It's official. People are saying he could be out by 2027. The second that talk started making its way around, one question instantly took over the conversation. It wasn't about a celebration or a big reunion. Instead, people started asking, what does Boosie Badazz do now? If you know the history behind this case, then you already understand why rumors about Marlo Mike possibly leaving prison grabbed so much attention and sparked so many debates. This story reaches back to one of the most heavily discussed murder-for-hire cases ever connected to a major rap artist. Prosecutors once alleged that Marlo Mike played a central role in the case, allegations that were so serious they originally carried the possibility of the death penalty. According to court proceedings, his testimony and the actions prosecutors attributed to him became a major part of the state's case. Now, with reports suggesting he could eventually return to society, many people are once again revisiting everything that happened and wondering what it could mean today. People online have even claimed Boosie is worried, but that's still speculation, not a confirmed fact. Still, the rumors refuse to slow down. By the time we finish breaking everything down, you'll understand why this case continues to spark intense discussions and why so many people who followed it from the beginning are paying close attention. What's good, fam? Welcome back. And if you're new here, you're definitely in the right place because today we're taking a deep look at one of the most controversial and complicated stories ever tied to Southern rap. This isn't another story about rap beef, social media arguments, or somebody throwing shots during an interview. This case involves homicide allegations, lengthy court battles, witness testimony, and the way criminal cases can become linked to major figures in the music industry. It's a story that has stayed in the headlines for years because of just how serious the accusations were. Today we're looking at the history surrounding Marlo Mike, Boosie Badazz, and the legal case that connected their names in ways that people are still talking about. We'll separate courtroom facts from public speculation and explain why this story continues to generate so much attention years after the biggest headlines first appeared. There are plenty of twists, and every chapter adds another layer to the bigger picture. To understand everything, we have to go back to where it all started. Not with a courtroom, not with a verdict, but with a young man growing up in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Before Michael Loading became widely known as Marlo Mike, before his name appeared in legal filings and news reports, and before people across the country debated his role in one of Southern rap's most talked about criminal cases, he was simply another young person trying to survive in a difficult environment. Michael Loading, better known around Baton Rouge as Marlo Mike, grew up in neighborhoods where many people faced limited opportunities and constant challenges. During the mid-2000s, parts of Baton Rouge struggled with high poverty, long-standing gang activity, and violent crime. For many young people living there, finding a safe path forward wasn't easy. Every decision could carry serious consequences, and daily life often came with risks that stretched far beyond what most people ever experience. There weren't endless opportunities waiting around the corner or easy ways to escape difficult circumstances. For many, life revolved around the neighborhood, the people they knew, and the unwritten rules that shaped everyday survival. That was the reality Marlo Mike grew up around, according to accounts of the area at the time. He wasn't known as a rapper chasing fame or someone looking for the spotlight. Instead, he was viewed as someone connected to the streets while another Baton Rouge native was rapidly becoming one of the biggest names in hip-hop. That rising artist was Torrance Hatch, the rapper the world would eventually know as Boosie Badazz. As Boosie's music career continued to grow, his success brought national attention to Baton Rouge. But at the same time, legal controversies and criminal investigations unfolding back home would eventually place both names in the same story, creating a case that people are still discussing years later. Now this is where the story takes a much more serious turn, fam. According to prosecutors, the connection between Boosie and Marlo Mike wasn't described as a typical friendship. It wasn't presented as two people from the same neighborhood, simply looking out for each other like you often see in rap culture. Instead, prosecutors argued in court that their relationship was based on something far more serious and much more controversial. The prosecution alleged that by the time these events unfolded, Boosie had already become one of the biggest artists to come out of Baton Rouge. With growing success, a national fan base, and increasing financial resources, prosecutors claimed he used that position to pay Marlo Mike to carry out violent acts on his behalf. Those were allegations made by the state, and they became one of the central themes of the entire case. According to the prosecution's theory, Marlo Mike wasn't simply someone Boosie knew from the neighborhood. Prosecutors alleged he acted as a paid gunman, claiming Boosie supplied the money and the alleged motive, while Marlo Mike carried out the shootings. They argued this arrangement extended across multiple incidents, presenting it as an ongoing pattern rather than a one-time event. Those claims became the foundation of the state's argument before a Louisiana jury. The prosecution did not portray the two men as equal partners or lifelong friends who happened to get caught in the same investigation. Instead, they described what they believed was a financial arrangement in which one person allegedly directed the crimes while the other allegedly carried them out. Those allegations were among the most explosive claims ever presented in a criminal case connected to a nationally recognized rapper, and they immediately drew widespread attention from both the public and the media. To understand why these allegations had such a massive impact, it also helps to understand where Boosie was in his career at that time. By the late 2000s, Boosie Badazz had grown far beyond being a local Louisiana artist. His music had built a loyal following across the country, and many listeners connected with his honest storytelling and vivid descriptions of life in Baton Rouge. His mixtapes spread quickly, his fan base continued to grow, and his reputation as one of Southern rap's most authentic voices became stronger with every release. Many fans felt his music reflected real-life struggles instead of polished entertainment. His lyrics often focused on hardship, survival, family, and the realities of growing up in difficult neighborhoods. Whether people agreed with every message or not, they believed his music came from personal experience, and that authenticity became a huge part of his success. Because of that public image, the criminal allegations created an enormous contrast. Prosecutors weren't simply questioning lyrics or artistic expression. They alleged that some criminal conduct extended far beyond music, and that accusation immediately became one of the biggest stories in hip-hop. Fans weren't just reading headlines about another celebrity facing charges. They were trying to make sense of serious courtroom allegations involving an artist whose music had become deeply important to many people. The discussion quickly shifted from entertainment to difficult questions about the relationship between public image, personal life, and criminal accusations. One of the key parts of the prosecution's case centered on the 2009 killing of Terry Boyd. According to prosecutors, this was not presented as a spontaneous act of violence or an argument that suddenly escalated. Instead, they alleged it was a planned murder for hire carried out after careful preparation. Prosecutors claimed Boosie orchestrated the crime, while Marlo Mike carried out the shooting, allegations that Boosie denied. Those claims ultimately formed the basis for the first-degree murder charge filed against him. At the time, that charge carried the possibility of the death penalty under Louisiana law. The seriousness of the accusation immediately raised the stakes to the highest level, making the case one of the most closely watched legal battles involving a major rap artist. Every hearing, every court filing, and every piece of testimony was examined closely as the case continued to unfold, keeping national attention focused on what happened next. We're not talking about a weapons charge, a drug case, or even a manslaughter allegation. Prosecutors charged Torrance Boosie Hatch with first-degree murder, a charge that, at the time, allowed the state of Louisiana to seek the death penalty. That was the level of seriousness involved, and it immediately turned the case into one of the most closely watched legal battles connected to the rap industry. According to the prosecution's case, Marlo Mike was a key figure because prosecutors alleged he carried out the shooting that formed the basis of the most serious charge Boosie faced. Their theory relied heavily on those allegations as they worked to convince the jury. The stakes could hardly have been higher, and every development drew intense public attention. The legal process stretched on for years. Boosie was indicted and remained in custody while the case moved through the court system. Throughout that time, fans, critics, and media outlets debated the case nonstop. Conversations filled barbershops, online forums, radio shows, and neighborhoods across the South as people tried to understand what was happening to one of the region's most influential rap artists. Everyone seemed to have an opinion, but the final decision would ultimately belong to the courtroom, not the public. Then came one of the biggest turning points in the entire story. In 2012, after hearing testimony, reviewing evidence, and listening to arguments from both sides during the first-degree murder trial, the jury returned a verdict of not guilty on the murder charge. Boosie was acquitted of the most serious accusation against him, bringing that part of the case to a close. That acquittal, however, did not mean every legal issue had disappeared. Boosie still faced separate drug convictions that kept him incarcerated until 2014. Those years behind bars had a lasting impact, something he has spoken about in interviews and reflected on through his music after his release. Even so, the first-degree murder case, the one that had captured national attention and carried the possibility of the death penalty, ended with a not guilty verdict. That remains the official legal outcome established by the court, regardless of the debates that continue online. Marlo Mike's legal outcome was very different. While Boosie was acquitted on the murder charge, Michael Louding faced his own trial. He was convicted in connection with the killing of Terry Boyd and received a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole under Louisiana law. That sentence meant there was no scheduled opportunity for parole, making it one of the harshest penalties available short of a death sentence. For years, many people believed that chapter of the story had reached its conclusion. Marlo Mike remained incarcerated under a life sentence. The court proceedings had ended, and Boosie returned home in 2014 to focus on rebuilding both his personal life and his music career. As time passed, the case gradually became something people looked back on as part of Baton Rouge history, rather than an ongoing headline. But stories connected to major public figures rarely stay quiet forever. Every so often, a new interview, legal development, or public comment brings old cases back into the spotlight. That's exactly what happened here, as renewed conversations began introducing an entirely new generation to a case many younger fans had never followed when it originally unfolded. One of the people who helped reignite public discussion was Charleston White, a commentator from Fort Worth, Texas, who has built a reputation for making outspoken and often controversial statements about hip-hop, street culture, and high-profile legal cases. Whether people agree with him or strongly disagree, his comments frequently attract widespread attention and spark heated debates across social media. As he began discussing the Boosie and Marlo Mike case, interest in the story surged once again, putting years-old events back into the public conversation in a major way. Charleston White isn't a rapper, a journalist, a lawyer, or a college professor. Instead, he built one of the internet's most recognizable and controversial platforms by sharing opinions that many people consider bold, provocative, and impossible to ignore. Whether people agree with him or not, his direct style has made him a constant topic of discussion across social media. He has spoken openly about his own past, including his criminal history and the time he spent incarcerated as a young person. Charleston often says those experiences shaped the way he now views street culture, the rap industry, and the connection between the two. That personal background is a major part of how he presents himself, and it's one reason some supporters believe his perspective carries weight. He frequently explains that he's speaking from lived experience, rather than simply commenting from the sidelines. Over the years, Charleston White has repeatedly criticized Boosie in public, and he hasn't softened his opinions. Through interviews, live streams, and social media posts, he has questioned Boosie's public image, challenged narratives surrounding past legal cases, and argued that many people do not fully understand everything that happened during that period in Baton Rouge. His comments have consistently generated strong reactions from both supporters and critics. Whether Charleston's opinions are accurate is a separate question. Much of what he says reflects his own interpretations and personal views rather than established facts. Unless claims are supported by court records or reliable evidence, they remain opinions or allegations. Even so, his statements regularly spread across the internet, where they spark debates and keep long-running controversies in the public eye. Boosie has responded publicly to Charleston White on multiple occasions, and those exchanges have often gone viral. Fans quickly choose sides, reaction channels cover every new comment, and clips spread across nearly every major platform. Each new exchange brings renewed attention to events that originally happened years earlier, introducing the story to audiences who may not have followed the case when it first made headlines. But the latest discussion goes beyond their ongoing back and forth. The reason Marlo Mike's name has returned to the spotlight is because Charleston White has recently spoken about him directly. Instead of only revisiting old arguments about the past, Charleston has publicly expressed support for efforts that could potentially lead to Marlo Mike's release. Those statements have immediately fueled another wave of online conversations. Charleston has questioned whether Marlo Mike's conviction should be re-examined and has said he would like to see him return home someday. Those comments reflect Charleston's personal opinions and advocacy rather than any official legal ruling. As of now, they do not mean that Marlo Mike's conviction has been overturned or that his release has been approved. Still, his remarks have encouraged many people to revisit the case and discuss what legal options, if any, might exist. When someone with a large online audience begins promoting that kind of message, it's easy to see why the conversation grows louder. Even without any immediate legal developments, public attention alone can reignite interest in a case that many people once believed had reached its final chapter. That's exactly why discussions surrounding Marlo Mike have become active again after years of relative silence. Some people have even started asking what could happen if his case were ever reviewed again through the legal system. Appeals, post-conviction proceedings, and other legal challenges can exist in criminal cases. But whether any particular effort succeeds depends entirely on the courts and the evidence presented. At this point, any suggestion that Marlo Mike will be released remains speculative unless supported by official court action. If a conviction were ever changed through the legal process, it would naturally become a major national story. Beyond the legal implications, it would also bring renewed attention to one of the most widely discussed criminal cases connected to Southern rap. For now, however, those possibilities remain hypothetical, and any future outcome would depend on decisions made through the judicial system, not public opinion or online debates. If Marlo Mike were ever released and decided to speak publicly, many people believe his story would attract enormous attention. In today's media landscape, podcasts, live streams, documentaries, and long-form interviews can reach millions of viewers in a very short time. Unlike when these events first happened, there are now countless platforms ready to amplify high-profile stories almost instantly. That possibility is one reason the conversation has become so intense online. It's not mainly about a current street conflict or a personal confrontation. Instead, much of the discussion centers on what Marlo Mike might choose to say if he were ever free to tell his story publicly. Those conversations are entirely speculative, but they have fueled countless debates across social media. This is also where claims that Boosie is shook come from. Those statements are opinions shared by commentators and internet users, not established facts. The theory some people promote is that someone closely connected to a major criminal case could eventually share their own version of events through interviews or other media appearances. Whether that would ever happen, and what, if anything, would be said, remains completely unknown. At this point, it's all speculation rather than confirmed reality. If a person involved in such a widely discussed case ever chose to speak, public interest would likely be significant. Media outlets, podcasts, and online creators often cover stories involving major legal cases and well-known public figures. Even so, no one can accurately predict whether someone would give interviews, what they might discuss, or how their statements would compare with the official court record. Those are questions that can only be answered if such events actually occur. Since his release from prison in 2014, Boosie has remained one of the most recognizable voices in Southern hip-hop. He returned to a fan base that continued supporting his music throughout his incarceration, allowing him to rebuild his career and remain active in the industry. New albums, interviews, business ventures, and frequent social media activity helped keep his name in the spotlight for years after his release. Along the way, Boosie has also become involved in numerous public debates that extend far beyond music. His comments on parenting, health, culture, and other social issues have regularly generated headlines and sparked heated discussions online. Supporters often praise him for speaking openly, while critics frequently disagree with his views. Either way, his willingness to express strong opinions has kept him at the center of public attention. For many younger fans, this outspoken version of Boosie is the one they know best. However, Despite everything that has happened since 2014, the legal case from 2009 through 2012 remains an important part of his public history. Major criminal cases involving well-known artists are rarely forgotten completely, especially when they receive national media coverage and continue to be discussed years later. That's one reason Charleston White's comments have generated so much attention. By continuing to discuss Marlo Mike, he also brings renewed focus to the legal case that connected both men's names. Even if no new court rulings emerge, simply revisiting those events introduces the story to new audiences who may have never heard about it before. As a result, conversations surrounding both Marlo Mike and Boosie continue to resurface across social media and online platforms. Whenever people discuss Marlo Mike's conviction, the broader legal case often comes up as well, because the events were linked during the original court proceedings. That connection has remained part of the public record for years, making it difficult to separate one discussion from the other. As long as public figures continue referencing the case, interest is likely to continue among both longtime followers and newer audiences discovering the story for the first time. Looking at the bigger picture, this story goes beyond any one individual. It also reflects the challenges faced in parts of Baton Rouge during the mid-2000s, where poverty, violence, and limited opportunities shaped many lives. It highlights how success in the music industry could exist alongside serious legal issues, and how events from years ago can continue influencing public conversations long after the courtroom proceedings have ended. This story also highlights how the legal system handles cases involving race, poverty, celebrity, and serious violent crime. Court decisions can bring closure for some people, while leaving others with unanswered questions. Even years later, those different perspectives continue shaping how people discuss high-profile cases like this one. It also shows how internet culture has completely changed the way old stories stay alive. Events that happened more than a decade ago can suddenly dominate social media again after a single interview, viral clip, or controversial comment. The gap between history and today's headlines has become much smaller, allowing long-closed cases to return to public discussion almost overnight. Another major factor is the influence of online personalities. Someone with a large audience can keep an old story in circulation simply by continuing to talk about it from new angles. Whether people agree with their views or strongly disagree, repeated coverage can introduce the same case to entirely new audiences and keep debates going for years. While we're here, it's also worth looking at the Baton Rouge music scene during the years these events unfolded. Understanding that environment provides important context. It helps explain the world many artists were navigating as they tried to build music careers while living in communities facing serious economic hardship and violent crime. During the 2000s, Baton Rouge produced a remarkable amount of influential music. The city developed its own unique sound and cultivated talented artists who built loyal fan bases despite having far fewer industry resources than larger music markets like New York, Atlanta, or Los Angeles. Boosie became one of the biggest stars from that movement, but he was part of a much larger community of musicians, producers, and artists, all working to create opportunities through music. Many performers from that era built careers by telling stories rooted in their personal experiences. That authenticity became one of the defining characteristics of Southern rap and helped listeners connect with the music on a deeper level. At the same time, it also created challenges because real-life experiences and artistic expression could become closely linked in the public's mind, especially when legal controversies entered the picture. For Boosie, that balance between music and personal history remained a defining part of his career. His songs often explored themes of loyalty, hardship, family, loss, and survival, while his legal battles brought even greater public scrutiny. When prosecutors brought their case, many fans found themselves comparing the courtroom allegations with the image they had formed through his music. That contrast became one of the reasons the case received such widespread attention. Marlo Mike's legal outcome unfolded very differently. While Boosie was acquitted of the murder charge, Michael Louding was convicted in connection with the killing of Terry Boyd and sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. That sentence was based on the court's findings and remains part of the official legal record. Regardless of the public debate surrounding the case, those court decisions continue to define the legal status of both men. Charleston White's recent comments have renewed attention on that sentence by publicly questioning whether it should ever be reconsidered. However, online discussions alone cannot change a criminal conviction. Any modification to a sentence would have to come through the legal system based on applicable laws, court proceedings, and judicial decisions. Until then, speculation about future outcomes remains exactly that, speculation. Whether Marlo Mike's legal situation ever changes is something only future court actions can determine. Public opinion, viral videos, and internet debates may influence conversations, but they do not decide criminal cases. Any significant development would require official legal action, not simply widespread attention online. That's an important distinction as this story continues evolving in the public eye. This case remains one of the most talked about legal stories connected to Southern hip-hop because it combines music, crime, the justice system, and internet culture in ways that continue drawing attention years later. Even now, people continue revisiting old court records, interviews, and public statements while debating what happened, what has already been decided in court, and what the future might hold. That's why this story continues generating discussion long after the original trials came to an end. So what's your take on where this story goes from here? With Charleston White continuing to speak about Marlo Mike and new audiences discovering the case online, do you think there will ever be another major legal development? And if there were, how do you think it would affect the public conversation surrounding everyone connected to this case? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoy in-depth breakdowns that go beyond the headlines, make sure to check out our next video for more stories and detailed analysis.